Is it time to retire the UI16? My initial impressions on the Soundcraft UI24R. So anybody who's watched this channel or just knows me in general, the UI16 has been an integral part of my setup for a very long time. Even in the early days where the web server would freeze up a bit and I would have to kind of work in a bypass plan so I could reboot it and all. Overall, I was still extraordinarily pleased with just all the capabilities that it enabled me as a solo DJ. And over time, they rebuilt everything from scratch in the firmware and just created this extraordinarily solid piece of equipment that I consistently rely on every event that I ever do. Now, I own two UI16s. I have one for my ceremony setup and one for my reception. And if you want to go into really extreme detail, I have both my whole setup video that I have that I'm going to link below, and also a really deep and in-depth article on the UI16. It was filmed some years ago, but everything still stands. And ever since Soundcraft announced the UI24R, I was always looking for a big excuse to switch things over. Now, coming in at just under $1,100, this is not an inexpensive solution, and I have two. I have one for ceremony, I have one for reception, and you know, it is more than twice the price than the UI16. Now, I'm the first to tell you that the UI16 I think is undervalued, and I actually paid more for mine when they initially came out, and now they're priced a little bit differently with the 24 now on the scene. But even at $1,100, with all the features that it enables for a solo DJ, it gives you just incredible freedom that I think after you see this video, you might want to be diving into this as well. And if not the 24, maybe the 16. So let's do some unboxing. We're going to mount them in my cases and we're going to test some things out. Alright, now so what we're going to do is start mounting the 24 in place of where the 16s are. On top is my ceremony case, and this should actually be a pretty simple change out. All right, a quick side-by-side of the 16 and 24 before I put the 24 in the case. As you can tell, the layout has changed significantly. It's definitely heavier by far. You definitely get more XLR only type plugs. You get an entire bottom row of that, where the 16 has 8 combo jacks. In this case, it now has 10 combo jacks. Again, my biggest concern right now is going to be the relocation of my master outs. Was on the bottom right before, now it's on the top left. And the way I kind of run things, I have my my dolly with my SKB. I just kind of feed it up one of the grips and I just plug it right in. In this case, I have a bit more of a distance to cover, so I have to double check that. And also, it's going to interfere a little bit with all the cabling that happens in here. So I might have to reroute things ever so slightly just to make sure it gets a nice clean look that I'm hoping for. If we turn things to the side, as you can see, they did change the location of things, where the power and input is on the right-hand side of the 16. It's now on the left-hand side of the 24. So all the additional controls and all this on the right-hand side of the 24 was on the 16 on the left. All right, so as you see, some things have changed since the last picture here, and there was some reason behind this. So everything had originally mounted just fine, and everything was okay. But I really was not liking what I was going to have to contemplate to route my cables properly. So, I have these custom cables made by Ben Stowe. Hey Ben, and LLFX. So I have these custom pigtails made. Power, XLR, and for one of my setups I also have 2 power running because I have my subs paired off of that. Now I feed this through my casters below, and it makes sense to have my power on the very first run of the case. From there, originally I had my IEM, my antenna, and then my UI16 at that point. The UI16 had its inputs below. Now, with mounting the 24 upside down, this gives me my my masters back down on the bottom. Now, it is, I'm still trying to get used to this. I'm not loving it per se, but this definitely solves the issue that I have of trying to keep, both my power and my XLRs, close to each other. And I think I can get used to this. I have a short throw for my IEM. I actually changed this over to aux8 as opposed to 1, just so it's closest to my outputs. And I did decide in the end that because there's always the potential for interchangeability between my reception and ceremony rig, and now that I can do matrix, bonding those channels to my master, it just kind of made sense. Let's just throw it on aux8. I could control everything off the master anyways, and life is good. So the more I'm looking at it, the more I can get used to it, but it still takes a few moments for me to really kind of, be zen about it. All right, now that we've seen the hardware, let's go to the interface. And for anybody that knows the UI16, you've seen the interface before, and this isn't much different now. I have changed my IP address because of the way I've set up my router. If you want more information on that, there's definitely a few videos and blog posts out there that really go into the detail of setting up the UI's network and setting it to what you want. But if you've seen the UI16, you're essentially seeing almost the same, minus all the additional features and enhancements that it has. There's definitely, of course, a lot more channels in here to browse through. Some additional features like VCA, which we're not going to get into in this case. So one feature I was really going for was the ability to control one or more aux channels throughout my master mix interface itself. So right now, as I would normally use my UI16, if I was, running my IEM, and in this case it was through aux1, if I wanted to, say, bring down my mix on both the master and my aux, I would have to go, let's say, bring down my mixer in here, then I have to go into the aux channel itself, find my mixer, and then adjust as needed. Now, it works, but it's a little bit cumbersome. And you do get one additional feature of having what's called global mutes. So if I muted it from here, it does mute against all the aux channels. But that isn't quite exactly what I needed. But now with the UI24, I do get this feature. So the feature is called Matrix, and all you essentially have to do is find the aux channels you want to operate off of. You hold it down and you just switch to Matrix. And that automatically just flips the aux channel over to a matrix channel, and now you control everything off your master control over on your aux control. Now, in my case, I don't need it onto my aux1, but I have set it already up on my aux8 channel. This is one that happens to be closest to the rack ear, where I can mount my IEM with the right angle and keep everything nice and clean. But it's just going to be a nice additional feature to be able to control all this without having to constantly flip screens to be able to do that. All right, now one big feature that I was looking for when I bought the 24 was the ability to do multi-track recording. Now, you might ask, why would a DJ want this? And it's pretty simple. Number one, for my videographers that I work for, having the ability to record all my channels individually and then be able to send those off to them so they can work with it in post and get the best audio from each channel possible without having to worry about all the major mix that's within a single file. So it gives unprecedented control from recording out in the field and being able to use that within their videos. And even more so for my own use. When I'm recording my gig logs and other files like that, I can record in multi-track and use that to the best of my ability for my own videos. Now, in the interface itself, you'll see the option of 2-track recording and playback, this is what you normally would see with the 12 and 16. Operates pretty much exactly the same as you would expect. If you hit record, it's going to start recording a file with a timestamp based off of what's on your tablet. And if you go over here into multi-track, you'll see that things are kind of broken up into sessions and you can patch things. Now, for simplicity's sake, I'm not going to get super heavy into all this, but essentially each session that you record, it will enumerate a new folder for it. And then any of the files that are being enabled are going to be named whatever you have named those particular channels. So as you see, I had a session 3 here with mic 1, mic 2, mic 3, mic 4. So just be aware that all of them are named with the associated channel that they're recording on. And to enable those, you just go into your record channels option here in multi-track config and choose the channels that you want. Now you'll see mine are backwards here a little bit because if you remember, I had to mount my 24 upside down in the case itself. But whatever channels I want to enable, I just simply enable them. And I go into multi-track and it'll start a new session when I start to record and then finish it up when everything's done. Now, if you notice over here on the right-hand side, you see your playback and record, and this is just for the 2-track, just like it was with the 12 and 16. But there is a way to get a more advanced sidebar in this. So if you go into settings and then go into local, there is a bigger slide out option. So when it reloads, it'll still look the same on that, but as soon as we click the UI button, we now have our banks, which will, again, if we're going to get a really deep dive UI24 video, I'll try to cover all these things. But just to get to the basics in here, we also have player and functions as well. But player is where we want to be, and you'll see playback and record, and more importantly, multi-track play and multi-track record. So what are my thoughts now that I've had it for a little bit? I've mounted it in my case. I've been playing around for just a little. I have not gone through an event yet on it, but I'm pretty familiar with the 16's interface, so it's now just utilizing the additional features out of this. Well, for starters, there's just so many features out of this. It's hard to even just talk about a couple. You could write a novel on everything that is available. This is a much more powerful application. This is a true digital audio workstation. This is a different breed than the 16. That being said, the simplicity of the 16 definitely carries over in many features in the 24, with a couple caveats. Doing the multi-track recording, you have to enable a couple different things to be able to make sure that you either have multi-track immediately available on the interface, or you just do an additional click to get into it to do the recording. But still a very simple interface for the amount of complexity that it offers. Now there is one big thing to note, and that is the amount of power that the 24 consumes versus the 16. Now the 16 settles around like 10 watts of power, where the 24 consumes 33 to 34 watts of power. Now, I did do a test on my battery and I was still fine. I operated in a full charge at just a hair over 90 minutes of operational time. So for me, that still works well within my parameters. My pre-ceremonies are usually 30 minutes or so. My ceremonies are usually another 30 minutes, so it gives me additional buffer time to work if things happen to be running late, or as people are kind of walking around and all that, if I need those additional minutes. So still should work for me. Now I have a couple of weddings coming up with videographers in play, so being able to hand over those individual files is going to be just a really nice feature to be able to offer these videographers. And again, even for myself, if I want to use this in my video creations for my gig logs and all that, I now have all of that additional unadulterated audio to work with. Now, just like with the 16, I'm gung-ho with the 24. Even in the days of the 16 when I ran into problems with it, it was still so worth the money that I invested into it. And that seems to be even more so with the 24. I'll do a long-term review. I just make sure there's no issues like the 16 had initially when it first came out. But Soundcraft definitely learned a lot with the 16 and the 12 and created this just tremendous product with the 24. There's a video and I hope you liked it. So click that thumbs up, hit subscribe, ding that notification bell. If you like content like this, head over to my Patreon page and subscribe. And if you like more videos like this, check out my 4 DJs Only playlist and other great videos on this channel.